Okay, maybe we'll get started. Nice to see everybody. I am zooming in from Spirit Rock Meditation Center, where I'm leading the dedicated practitioner program retreat. Here. And the internet here is generally pretty good, but also, kind of in the country and is subject to outages. So if I disappear, don't worry, I'll come back. It also used to have brownouts here where the power would go off like just for a minute. Sometimes your computer would reboot, but now they have a fancy schmancy generator, so that shouldn't happen. So I thought today we could start with just a little meditation to arrive. And then we'll see where we go. It's a shorter one. Maybe taking the deepest breath of the day. Feel the rise of the body. And on the exhale, the settling. You can even make a little sound as you exhale. Bringing the mind, the attention into the body, the experience of having a body, being in a body, sense of the orientation of the body in space, and the sense of the weightedness of the body. Sense that the feet are supported by the earth. Your seat is supported by earth element, hardness, your chair. And seeing if you can let go of any extra effort, so you just are supported by your seat and the skeletal structure of the body, relaxing as many muscles as can be relaxed while still maintaining that posture. Maybe softening the brow, bringing the attention to the space around the eyes and inviting a kind of softening. Sometimes the energy of the eyes is very outward. That's true, relaxing as if the eyeballs were settling back into their sockets. And allowing the muscles of the face to soften, and the jaw. This instruction from the Buddha, breathing in, relaxing the body, breathing out, relaxing the body. And softening the back of the neck and the throat, front of the neck. Inviting the shoulders to soften, and maybe even move one iota backward and downward, which opens the front of the body. You might feel the weight of the arms hanging in the shoulder joint as you invite it all to soften. And then allowing the attention to move to any part of the body where there's some sense of tension or holding or bracing or any physical discomfort. And while being aware of that part of the body, inviting it to soften. Breathing in, relaxing the body. Breathing out, relaxing the body. Allowing the attention to be anchored on this feeling of the breath, moving in and out of the body. And directing the sense of as if the breath were going through any part of the body that requires it. And then just feeling the breath moving through the body just as the body is. Not trying to make anything happen, just receiving the flow of sensation and letting everything else recede into the background. So simply breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in, breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out. And whenever the mind wanders from the breath, just beginning again. Part of the practice is this process of remembering, returning again and again.
You're muted.
I thought I would begin by starting where we left off last time. I'm tempted to re-say everything I said while I'm muted, but I'm going to just let that go. Thank you for telling me. I once was in front of a group and I spoke for over a minute before someone told me that I was muted. So are you all seeing yeah, you're seeing the 5 hindrances. So this is what we discussed last time. These states of mind that when we are unaware of them, we can get captured by them, caught in them in ways that lead to unnecessary suffering. The sense desire, the thing we want, often the thing we think we need, that will be the solution to all our problems, even if just in that moment, you know. And mindfulness is a very powerful antidote to all of these things, because we can, when mindfulness is present, we can, sometimes mindfulness is called the great step backward. In the Zen tradition, they often say the great step back. So it's like stepping out of the storm of our ill will and aversion to see, oh, there's ill will present here, in a way that we're a little bit aloof. Venerable Analayo uses the term aloof to describe mindfulness, that we're not so identified with, you know, my anger, my desires, my restlessness, but more of a sense of coexistence with these natural energies that we all have, constantly coming and going. Sometimes we have multiple hindrance attacks where there's a bunch of things we want and a bunch of things we don't want, and the body is restless and we don't know what we're doing, so we're doubting this whole endeavor. A very powerful aid to our practice and indeed our life, actually, to bring awareness to when these hindrances are present and when they're absent. So what I thought I would do is put us in small groups, and just have you have a discussion. And let's see what these groups will look like. Basically, the idea will be to, for each of you to have a period of time to talk and just talk about which of these hindrances do you notice most often? Because we tend to have proclivities. You know, some people run more anxious, restless. Some people run more angry, fire element. Some people run more, you know, like encaptured by desires and, you know, like we say greedy types. Heather.
I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit further about doubt.
Doubt. Yeah, so doubt is the thought that arises that says, nothing's really happening here. I must not be doing this right. I'm a terrible meditator. Or maybe this isn't the path for me. Or maybe Guru doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And inside LA, it's a scam, just, you know, taking our donations. It can go all kinds of ways.
So it's not necessarily doubt about yourself.
Doesn't have to be. For many people, it's doubt about yourself, your ability to do it. You know, one of my teachers says, you know, he's sitting there thinking, well, everyone has Buddha nature except me. I'm just sitting here like a schlub. Any form of sometimes doubt comes when you just don't understand the instructions. You know, like he's saying, feel the breath. I don't really feel the breath. I don't know what's happening. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
And I'll just add something that came up yesterday. Is like there's quite a lot of relationship often between doubt and restlessness, because when we go into doubt, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, that creates agitations. There's often restlessness and doubt can be very closely related. So let's see, where's the so we create all rooms. So I'm gonna create, you'll be sort of like groups of 2 or 3, depending on how the numbers work out. And so let's do 10 minutes. But we'll do this as a mindfulness. We'll do 15 minutes. We'll do this as a mindfulness exercise. So you kind of decide who goes first and allocate 12 of the 15 minutes, either 6 minutes each or 4 minutes each, depending on the number in your group. And somebody keep time, just so you'll all have an equal amount of time to speak. And the person will just give a, kind of call it a monologue. Hopefully that's not a stressful word, about a stream of consciousness sharing about which of these hindrances you notice most prominent in your life, and how you're relating to them, practicing with them, not able to practice with them, noticing them after the fact, starting to see when they're arising. And then when the 12 minutes is elapsed, you can have 3 minutes just to dialogue, a more conventional dialogue about about this issue. So in the mindfulness exercise part of this, one person is speaking and the other person or people are just listening and remembering the qualities of mindful listening with the ears and the eyes, listening with the body, the heart that resonates, and the system, which, for most of us is accessible, some not so much, which is very painful, that can intuit the mental state of another person through posture, body language, tone of voice, micro expressions, and some ineffable intuition that we sometimes have. We are often quite connected. And in the listening, also to trust emergence. Often we're rehearsing rather than listening. So when you notice that you're planning, rehearsing, and just bringing your attention back to active listening, trusting that whatever emerges when it's your time to speak will be the Dharma, the truth of that moment. And then speaking from your heart, if that has any meaning to you, like you can reveal as little or as much as feels comfortable, depending on who's in your group, but honest, vulnerable assessments are quite beautiful to share and receive if that feels safe and accessible. So everybody with me on the process?
Okay. Can you show that slide again? Will we see the slide?
I don't think I have a way to share it I could broadcast it to the room, but it's I could broadcast the 5 things to the room, which are desire, aversion, sloth and torpor, sleepiness, dullness, restlessness, and doubt. So I'll give you 15 minutes with a slight grace period. And you're off. Way out back. Okay, I would love to hear what you talked about. your favorite hindrance? Or the one that favors you the most?
Well, if I guess I can go first.
Yeah.
Well, this kind of is actually opportune because I did have a question for you, and it's probably going to be a little too existential, but we were talking about, Carol and I were talking about doubt, and I was talking about, because this is my first introduction to Buddhism, and I'm also reading a book about it. And I'm seeing that there's no questions, there's no answer, there's no nothing about like our creation, you know,
Yeah.
or a higher power or a creator, or how we came in, how did mankind even come into existence. There's, of course, there's a scientific portion of it, but anyway, I just kind of was wondering that there's where my doubt comes in, and not that I doubt what the teachings, because I think that's very helpful to get through this life. But but there seems to be no beginning and no kind of beginning to it all. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So that's kind of sometimes where my doubt comes in, not not necessarily in a negative way, but it seems to be lacking in it.
Yeah, and this is the question of like, why many people say that Buddhism is more of a philosophy than a religion, because it doesn't have uh, an acknowledgement of creative force, or it doesn't have the Buddha. It's said that on the night of his awakening, that the Buddha had full knowledge of the cosmos. There's been a description of him saying that he saw the countless expansions and contractions of countless universes. Sounds a little bit like our modern physics in some way. But when people would ask him these questions, he would almost always refuse to answer, because he said that this is just, you get tangled in views, and these things don't lead to freedom or awakening. And so even on basic questions like, is there a self? Is there not a self? Is there neither self nor not self? He would refuse to answer. And there's a famous sutta that I really like where he said, he held a handful of leaves in his hand, and he said, which is greater, the leaves in my hand or the leaves in the forest? Of course, the students all said, oh yeah, your leaves in the forest are much, much greater. And he's like, the leaves in the forest is what I know, but the leaves in my hand are what you need to know for your liberation. So there was a sense of like, there's a fake Buddha quote, which says it very well. He actually, I don't think he said this on good authority, but he's often quoted as saying, I teach only two things, suffering and the end of suffering. And it's very much in alignment with the early Buddhist teachings, because you see his emphasis on, being skillful in ways, acting in ways that lead to alleviation of suffering for yourself and others, and seeing that your actions of body, speech, and mind have impacts. There is a kind of natural law. There's an acknowledgement of natural law, but no discussion of much else, and neither a negation of them either.
Right.
Really.
Just doesn't speak on it at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So doubt.
So doubt was, yeah, doubt for me, and I think it was aversion, and an aversion to the suffering, because I suffer from grief, and sorry, I start getting upset and I just push it away. I don't want to feel it.
Yeah.
So I constantly am pushing it away. But I know that in the big picture, though, it's like if I don't start letting myself feel it, I'll never, I guess, overcome it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's it's difficult, to digest those powerful energies of grief and sorrow. And for me, like, most of my anger is rooted in heartbreak. I'm angry at the world or the way people behave. There's heartbreak underneath it. And what I love about this practice is my experience time and time again for myself and many, many other people I've worked with, that bringing those energies into the light of awareness with some skill, like not overwhelming, dipping in, feeling, building your confidence, building your courage, building your window of tolerance to bear that they do metabolize. All the things that are stored in our body, they transmute, they metabolize, and then it's a virtuous cycle because we see this happen and our faith brightens and we practice more sincerely, and then we're able to take in more and digest. And I think this work we do for ourselves, but we're doing it for the planet also, because these forces that are in us that are unmetabolized, they impact how we go through the world. So
It's true.
um,
How you see it, and I guess the energy that you want to put into it. If you're constantly carrying this kind of weight, makes it difficult.
yeah, and just being familiar with the patterns of the mind, just seeing how the mind is, without taking it so personally, can be profoundly freeing.
Yes, that I do. I have these discussions with myself because it seems that while I'm busy all day, everything's fine. My mind isn't on. My mind is on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's that nighttime, when everything's kind of quiet. That's when everything wants to start coming up, and I'm always like, really, I'm trying to sleep here if you don't mind. It's like I have these conversations with myself, but yeah, that's like it seems like when all of it this in the silence is when it all kind of starts.
Yeah, and that's I know it's annoying, but it's also like that's how healing works. Healing can't really happen when we're just like swirling through life. Healing happens in those moments in between. That's why this practice can be so healing, because we're really committing to just do nothing and just
And I
be
think
with the flow of life.
it's, I don't want to take up much time, but I feel like the more I'm learning, the more because I'm studying it and I'm, going through everything we talk about and all of that, it's kind of helping a little bit in kind of understanding that this is just that, death is a process and it's just what it is. And so,
And grieving is a process.
yeah.
So,
And so, anyway, thank you.
thanks, Heather. Just take a breath together. Just breathing in deeply and breathing out. The thing I love about this practice, and I'll talk about that more, is that, in this way that we're together, we get to do it together. We don't have to be alone in our difficulties. Anyone else have a favorite hindrance they would like to share?
I'll go. Ill will, a lot of anger, lots of anger. And then, then it becomes this sort of self-flagellation over being angry, acting out, not wanting to be that way. But what's been beautiful about the practice is there's, if before it was ever present in my face, now it feels like there's some distance. And so there's a bit of awareness around it and the ability to sort of sit with it a little more and go under and under and under and find the place of compassion, whether it's for myself or others. But the hindrance is definitely ill will.
Yeah, that's very familiar to me. Ill will, and then ill will towards the ill will, not wanting it. Ill will towards myself for having ill will, like I should be more evolved than that. Anybody else? Oh, Carolyn.
Last week um, I was practicing, and some aversion and ill will came up. That's been a source of great hurt for a couple of years, and I thought, okay, just be in my body, you know, let just feel this, and where is it? And so I was breathing with it, and I could feel it in my face and in my hands.
Hmm.
And then there was this really quite wonderful moment when I recognized that it was just like cartoons, like, you know, like the rage, sort of, "Arr," you know, it was there, and it made me laugh at myself and laugh with it and let it go some, um and think that I should probably watch cartoons to get more of a sense of that they could be great teachers about where in the body do we really feel things, because we grow up and we don't really let ourselves, you know, we have our professional selves and face, and that's all good in its own way, but um yeah, that was a really it ended up being really positive to let it move through me.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I love those moments of seeing something more clearly and being able to loosen the grip a little bit. Anybody else like to share a hindrance?
I was sharing with my group that all five of them resonate. It's a little bit overwhelming sometimes. And that it's, I think one of the things that I struggle with, and I think I was thinking about the hindrances, not just in hindrances to meditation, but also just parts of ways of being as human that, can get in the way of maybe what we would actually, the humans we would like to be.
Yeah.
And how it can be, I feel like there must be some magic ingredient I'm missing. Maybe it's a sense of humor about all of the times I see those things, because it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a terrible person, but I see it a lot.
Yeah. Well, the seeing is actually the most important part, because you have a map now that is very useful. The first instruction from the Buddha is knowing the presence or absence of each hindrance. So usually we notice the presence. Maybe if there's a moment where everything's okay, it's nice to just say, like what Thich Nhat Hanh called the joy of the non-toothache. Like it's just to have joy that we're not like overly hindered. The next part of the practice is to start to make the connection between how did I get here? A lot of aversion is present. What are the conditions that led to this aversion? For me, it's like I didn't sleep well, I didn't eat properly, I saw other things that have nothing to do with the topic at hand. The room is too warm. Just look at that. It could be all, and then other deeper things. Like I grew up in a family where overachievement was just expected. And I never got a pat on the back for any of the amazing accomplishments I had. And so I need validation. And that's a pattern, that's a sankhara in me. And when I don't get validation, I get hurt and I can lash out. Like just to start to make the things that we know about, just start to make the connections. And then developing mindfulness for the precursors of anger. Like I'm hungry and I'm tired. Like now I know I'm prone to anger and I can guard my mind. I can say to somebody starting a conversation, could we just have this conversation in half an hour when I've eaten something? When with all of these hindrances, because ultimately we're developing an intimacy with our patterns that lead to suffering. And this is one model of things that cause suffering that we can begin to see the conditions, and then we can begin to exercise stewardship to not put ourselves in those conditions. so noticing them, as painful as it is vital. You know, it's like, I mean, you're a physician, right? So you have to see the tumor to be able to remove it. If you don't see it, you might be living in bliss, but meanwhile, it's festering inside of you. It's the same sort of idea. Okay, so this section, I'm going to talk about mettā towards the end, and then we will do a loving kindness meditation. But I thought there were sort of like miscellaneous themes or concepts in Buddhism that I wanted to just kind of introduce and talk about. I have to actually share this screen because I only have one screen here, so I can't find the slides otherwise. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit already, you know, the concept that actions of body, speech, and mind have consequences. What I say to, even outside the Buddhist context, neurons that wire together fire together, that we're building these neural pathways with how we use our mind. And so if we spend a lot of time being anxious and worried or busy tracking a lot of things, then that becomes the natural inclination of the mind. Mind's busy and tracking a lot of things. And one of the antidotes to that is to spend time in stillness, quiet, training the mind to be steady in the breath or the body, to undo the negative impacts that just are basically our culture has on us, because culture keeps us scattered and fragmented in a lot of ways. This underlines all of the teachings, this really understanding this cause and effect, and beginning to trace the results, like what's here in the mind now, and learning to gently untangle the conditions that got us here. So the three characteristics, the three marks of existence, this is a way that the Buddha used to describe everything in the conditioned realm and the material realm. Dukkha, we talked about, the first noble truth, life has stress, suffering. There's an inherent unsatisfactoriness to things in the corporeal world. Good things don't last. We know we're going to lose everything, aging, death, sickness. These are all just realities of our incarnation as humans in this realm. And that is offset by the agency we have in the idea of karma. Anicca, impermanence, and constancy. So things in the conditioned realm are always changing. We can get the sense that they're, especially when we say look at the mind, we can get the sense, like when aversion is present or we're in a bad mood, we get a sense, or there's pain in the body. Oh my God, it's always going to be like this, which is a false view to really see. And this is one of the things I love about extended meditation practice. Like if you go on a retreat, even for a few days, you will really see up close how much the mind changes, that you could have 50 moods of the mind in a 45-minute sit. And the freedom in that is that we don't have to hang on, or some version of this too will pass when things aren't pleasant, and also a sense of like, can't hold on to things when they're good, just enjoy them while they're there. And then anatta, the third mark of existence, it's more esoteric, but also could just be not taking things so personally. Like the energies of the hindrances, aversion, desire, restlessness, sloth, and torpor, doubt. These are just universal phenomena that are always happening. coming and going as human beings. It's not a character defect. It's not a fault. It's and in some way it doesn't belong to us. We also inherit the sankharas or the patterns of our culture. You almost have to be not paying attention or really deluded to not have some sense of anxiety in the world we're in, because things are unstable and multiple crises happening simultaneously. And so any impact that has on what we're perceiving as this body is not personal in a certain way. Whatever you're experiencing is being experienced by millions, maybe billions of other human beings. And then also what we view as self, who we are, is not stable. So think about who you are when you're with your parents, if they're alive, or when they were alive, or who are you with your children, if you have children? Who are you in your professional life? Who are you when you are with strangers? That we take on these different aspects of our persona, these different qualities, and some of us change quite dramatically. But we have to be a certain kind of way professionally. Like there were times in my life where I had to be very kind of aggressive as a lawyer, and it's just not who I am at all. But it's a persona that I had to adopt to so to see that it's always changing. That who we are is not a fixed, stable thing. I'm not the same person I was 20 years ago. Even though there's a part of me that kind of feels not changing. One more way this is spoken about is like the Buddha describes, I think it was the Buddha, may not have been. Ancient sage describes a chariot, or we could say a car, and then says, where's the carness? Is the carness in the wheel, the axle, or the horse, or the seats? What part of it makes it a car? I have a ringing bell a lot of times when I'm actually at home, and what makes that a bell? Like it makes a sound when I ring it, but I could put cereal and milk in it and drink milk out of it. I could use it as a chamber pot. I could put a plant in it. That bell is a concept, and the thing is actually it has the meaning we give it, and that's really the idea of emptiness. That the object that we call a bell doesn't have any inherent bellness to it. It's convenient to call it a bell because that's what I'm using it for. Again, a very esoteric idea, but really just to not take our experience so personally. And one more example of this: if I hear a sound outside, could be pleasant, could be unpleasant, doesn't really matter. I hear a sound. The sound is arising in consciousness. And because my ears work, the sound arises in consciousness, but it would be unusual for me to say my sound. That's my sound, because it arose in my consciousness. But when thoughts also arising in consciousness, because they have a sense of interiority, we claim them as our thoughts. But really, are they your thoughts? Did you choose them? Do you have any ability to control them? Like, they're impersonal. They're also empty of any inherent existence. So, let me just see. And actually, the last thing I'll say about these three things is that when you practice insight meditation, the three profound insights are that you begin to see this in your own experience in a very concrete way. Like, yeah, we all know on an intellectual level, things are always changing. We know that there's suffering, but really grokking it on a different level. Like, if we really understood that everything is constantly changing, we wouldn't grip onto anything. So until we kind of have that insight on a visceral level, hard to be free from the things we're gripping onto. Christy, did you have a comment or question?
I don't know if I do. The thing that I was going to ask about is, just like when you were talking about how we're different people in different situations,
Mhm.
in some ways I feel like, is that truthful? Is that being, is that virtuous? Is that something that we should be okay with? Should we be, does the Buddha, and really the question is, does the Buddha say anything about this? And of course, but just like this idea that we're different. I mean, obviously it's true that we're different people in different situations. Is that something that we should just like embrace?
Yeah, well, I think what the Buddha would probably say is, here's some guidelines of how to go through the world, like don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, speak kindly to people, speak the truth, don't, sexually exploit someone, honor people's vows, don't take drugs that lead to bad decisions or intoxication. But I think, it's kind of by necessity that, like if you're talking to a baby or a puppy, we kind of need to be a different person than when we're in a boardroom talking to a bunch of professionals. When we're with our partners, it brings out different qualities of us, with our children, with our elders. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think it's actually, to be able to do that is a kind of a responsiveness to life. If we're inauthentic to our values, then I think that's something to examine, because that will lead to suffering.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, well, maybe I'll just briefly talk about the idea of refuge. This is another central idea in Buddhism. It's not really clear that the Buddha he's probably on board with it, because he didn't tell people not to do it, but that it came from him as much as it was the custom at the time. The idea of taking refuge, the idea of finding a place of safety, a place of refuge has these kind of two meanings. Like one meaning is a place of safety, and the other meaning is a place where you can protect what's valuable, like cultivating the inner qualities of the heart. And there's a way in which I think many of us are drawn to practice, because we are like seeking some kind of refuge, some kind of sense of well-being, some kind of sense of peacefulness in a very difficult world. So the three jewels, the so-called three jewels, are Buddha, Dharma, Dhamma, and Sangha. And it's quite common, if you were, say, to go to a Buddhist retreat, sometimes in Buddhist circles, they'll start with this invocation, a chant, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. And each one is done 3 times for emphasis. And it's, I go to the Buddha for refuge, I go to the Dhamma for refuge, I go to the Sangha for refuge. And it's, something happened. Resume share, okay. Oops, I'm back here. So just to talk about each one of these things briefly, that when we talk about the Buddha, each of these jewels or places for refuge have a kind of internal and external corollary. So externally, we have this person who we think lived about 2,600 years ago and discovered a path of liberation and had a lot of insights that are very valuable. We can be inspired by that idea of that person, and then more internally, the Buddha was the awakened one. The idea that we also could be awakened, that this mind, body, heart that we're given has an innate capacity for awakening. Or sometimes you can think of refuge in the Buddha as just awareness itself, this capacity to be aware, to know, to connect with our experience. And to see that, where are the places where we normally take refuge or seek a sense of safety? Busyness, distraction, food, drugs, addictions, Netflix, and those aren't reliable, lasting forms of protection or safety. So offering an alternative. So, oops, go back one. So the Dhamma externally, the teachings from the Buddha internally, just this sort of commitment to being in integrity, to living an ethical life, and not harming. And then Sangha traditionally has been the community of practitioners, traditionally monastic, but it's communities like this where we come together and we talk about these things and share our own experience of them, mirror each other. It's really, really helpful if you're around practitioners because they can point out when you're hindered, because it's very hard to see sometimes, when I'm really caught in something, but then a friend can say, sensing a lot of ill will over there. And that can be helpful. And then internally, this capacity to befriend our experience. So the internal is very, I really like, it's awareness, and the capacity to befriend what we're aware of, really. So yeah, this is what I was trying to say. Buddha is like knowing, awareness. Dhamma is that which is known, and Sangha is our capacity to befriend it. Which is a nice segue to mettā, because that's the concept of mettā. Okay, so these are the instructions that the Buddha gave to cultivate or arouse mettā. They're often done as a chant. I will abide, pervading 1/4 with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below and all around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. So this is the practice that we do in communities I'm a part of, that monastics do to remind themselves. And abide pervading, it's more of it's like a visual, energetic sense of the heart that is radiant, wishing all in its field well. And abiding is more like dwelling or living. It's like a quality of being more than it is a technique or a kind of thing. And mettā is an inexhaustible resource, unlike other resources. There's no end to the capacity of the heart to feel this quality of mettā and then to act in the world relying on that. And it's an antidote to a host of other afflictions, hostility, ill will, grief, really all of the hindrances and all the afflictive states of mind could substitute mettā. And I like this word mettā because I think the translation loving kindness, which is the one we usually get, is a little bit incomplete. It's an inner attitude of friendliness, of kindness, well-wishing, benevolence, universal positive regard, love, but the most unattached, kind of purest form of love. Non-aggression, non-resistance. So we're not resisting anyone or anything when we have metta. We're just abiding in this sort of like acceptance of how things are. And impartiality of mind, I really like this idea that because we cultivate metta based on invoking metta for these different categories of being. So we start where it's really easy. For me, that's puppies and baby goats, or babies of any species, really. You know, like they're so innocent and hard to have a grudge against a baby. Or traditionally in the ancient culture, an elder, a benefactor, a guru, someone who had really helped you in life. Moving to the dear friend. So this is someone where the baseline is that we really do wish them well, but it's complicated. Relationships, we have conflicts, we have tensions. The neutral person, the stranger, the person that we don't know anything about, the difficult person. Actually, be more accurate to say the person who causes us difficulty, because there's nothing actually inherently difficult with them. It's just how that we're relating to them. And self and all beings. And so we go through this progression that we develop the capacity to have this magnanimity of heart towards the people we love as equally to the people that we don't love or don't know, and ourself being included in this network. So that's developing the impartiality of mind. Like normally we would be partial to the people we love, we care about, and less prone to have a default attitude of friendliness towards certainly people that cause us difficulty, and often strangers, depending on our culture and ourself. Like this is a big issue in Western culture, that we often are very self-critical. And so befriending ourselves can actually be a profound experience. So the Buddha did this as this sort of like energetic, kind of like, it's called radiating metta, the sense of that energy of the heart, expansive and radiating in all directions. There's some evidence that this was in the original teachings, but mostly these phrases come from commentaries on the Buddha's teachings. And it's the idea of just seeding the mind with a little phrase that invokes that feeling of friendliness. So may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be at ease. And they're aspirations. It's not magical thinking. Like we know not everyone is safe, not everyone is healthy. It's a little bit like when you say, have a good trip. It's a genuine wish that person has a good trip, but their flight could get canceled, or they could have all kinds of complications. You can make up your own phrases. The litmus test for the phrase is it a phrase of goodwill? Sometimes I'll find, my phrase might be like, may you not be such a jerk. It's not a great phrase because you're really cultivating your oh well. So we'll do practice now, so the one thing I'll say is that we're practicing this metta in a couple of different ways. So we're invoking the quality of the heart filled with metta. We have a visualization of a being that makes it very easy to evoke metta. And we have phrases that seed the mind in a positive direction. And whatever comes up, we try to meet it with that same quality of kindness. Because usually, quite often, a lot of the time what comes up is everything that's not metta. This is like what sometimes we call a purification of the heart. Like get agitated, get irritated. And it is like those energies are moving through. They have to get out of the way, like dirty clothes in the washing machine. You look in the little window and the water's all dirty. That's because the clothes are getting clean. And that's how it works. Sometimes there's the experience of phone book mettā, reading the phrases. I'm going through the phrase and it just feels like I'm reading the phone book. It's just like ungodly boring, like nothing's happening. So you notice this is what this experience is. Can I meet phone book mettā experience with kindness and trust that something's happening here? I'm planting some seeds and building some capacity. And then sometimes mettā is present, and then we can just savor the feeling of a heart that is filled with love. You know, it's a beautiful, it's a nourishing thing internally and physiologically, and we can just enjoy it. So I didn't manage the time very well, so you don't have much time. So we'll do this for just a few minutes to get a flavor of it. I'll provide you with a longer mettā meditation that you can use on your own. So just finding some comfort and ease in your posture, just as it is. Bringing some awareness to the heart center of the body. Checking in, how's it in the heart in this moment? Maybe a little tender, maybe a little guarded, neutral. Doesn't matter, however it is. Meeting the heart in this moment with some kindness. And then bringing to mind a beloved being, a being where it's very easy to feel that you wish them well. Like I said, my favorite are animals, babies. And with the mental image or the felt sense of being with this being, imagine as if your heart were radiating this energy of mettā, filling them with this energy. And then dropping in some phrases in a gentle, kind inner voice, at a steady rhythm. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. Dropping in the phrase like a pebble in a pond, and then feeling the ripples of the heart as we sense into the sincere wish for the well-being of another. May you be happy. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. Whenever the attention wanders, just beginning again, connecting with the mental image or the felt sense of the beloved being, connecting with the heart center and the body. Sense of the radiant heart. And offering phrases, may you be happy. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be at ease. And now shifting the frame to imagine as if your beloved being were beaming the energy of metta towards you. Open to receive that energy. And then with a mental image of yourself, connectivity with the heart center of the body, offering phrases to yourself. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be at ease. And again, each phrase is like dropping a pebble in a pond, and we can then open to receive the effects of those words, and meeting whatever comes up as kindly as we can. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be healthy. And may I be at ease. Okay, just a short taste. Sampler platter. Any reflections on that experience? Christy?
I have well, one reflection is that for me it's never as effective for me to think about it visually as like to actually think of hugging the person. Is there a reason why I would not want to have that
Sounds great.
physical?
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, the it's a technique designed to arouse metta. So anything you can do to make that happen is great.
And the one other question, is there anything in the teachings and understanding of it that gives to metta the idea that the person is you?
You mean the other person?
Yeah.
Not in the traditional teachings.
Okay.
There are, it gets into not self and emptiness a little bit, like maybe you and me as a concept, but the teachings don't really get into that. I will say that in the Burmese tradition, the Burmese meditation masters believe that metta is a force in the world, so that it has some impact. And I'm usually quite skeptical and dubious about such claims, but I have had some experiences that are a little bit hard to explain. So I'm a little bit more open to that concept, like someone appearing in my metta field that I hadn't seen in 30 years and then running into them at an airport. So, many other stories that I have and other people have. So you could remain open to the idea that it's a force in the world, and also like it need not be, because ultimately what we're transforming is our own hearts. It's not really about the other people.
Thank you.
I was very resistant to this practice. I just thought it was like a little bit silly and soft. I wanted like the sort of manjushri to cut through ignorance and delusion. And when I finally surrendered to this practice, I've just found it to be so helpful. And now I teach mettā retreats, which I encourage you to all try. If you like this experience, go to a week-long mettā retreat, and it's life-changing. Carolyn.
Do the people have to be living that you're focusing on?
Different traditions disagree on this. So the Burmese would say, yes, the person has to be living, otherwise there's no place for that force to land. And then they might also say that if the person's not living, we have to be cautious that there's no grief in the field that might be interfering with the arising of mettā. I take a more liberal approach, which is what my teachers gave me, which is it doesn't matter, just notice if there's grief, and maybe choose a person that it doesn't arise where there's no grief. Yeah, Leslie.
Could you say a few words about why it's challenging at times to practice this for yourself? Or
I
is
think
that personal?
well, I mean, I have some ideas. I think we get scripts that say, we're not good enough because we don't look the way the archetypical people on TV look, with their six packs and whatever other things people have. And that we don't, many of us that are overachievers, which is often people who come to these circles, like we just have been like pushed to be better. And then there's a whole movement in North American culture for sure, maybe the Western culture in general, about like self-improvement. You go to a bookstore or the Amazon department with thousands of books, and I've gotten a lot out of a lot of them, but they are fundamentally negating who we are in this moment in favor of some imagined better version of ourselves, which is a kind of violence, actually. I'm very much cautious about that. I see mindfulness, meditation, Buddhism as a not a self-improvement process, but a self-exploration and a self-understanding practice. The improvements do happen, but that's not the focus.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Worthiness, we get into like an idea of worthiness, who am I to deserve this, affection? Yeah, Heather.
I'm just a little confused. But so when we're saying, may I be happy, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be at ease, aren't we envisioning our own self anyway to receive that?
Yeah, we are. I'm just, the only point I was making earlier is that for some people, it gets sort of stuck or blocked. It may seem selfish or self-indulgent, or people have lots of different, if you don't have that, then that's wonderful, because you're ahead of a lot of people.
Well, I think too, there's a component of self-love that a lot of people lack.
Exactly.
And self, I guess, nourishing. And I find that saying those things to myself, I find very helpful, reminding me to consider myself a little bit.
Yeah, to be your own friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm aware we are technically at our ending time. I have about 10 more minutes. If anybody would like to continue the discussion, if you need to leave, you're welcome to leave. But because it's our last class, I'm sorry that I envisioned that we would have like 15 minutes at the end for general Dharma discussion. So we could have about 10 minutes for that. If any question about anything we've talked about in these last 5 weeks, or anything I didn't talk about that maybe I should have talked about.
I'm finding that mindfulness of body really works with metta for me, because I didn't know that I was having such a hard time extending metta to myself until I discovered the tightness in my chest around that practice. Every time I extend metta to myself, I would feel a ball in the middle of my chest.
Mm.
That knowledge has been amazing in allowing me to sort of relax in the body and then receive the self metta. The other thing is, I find it helpful to see myself as a child, so that I'm extending the metta. It doesn't feel so selfish. It feels like the kid who needs it.
Yeah.
And that's just been a couple of my observations with metta practice that have been really helpful.
Yeah, and I think the observation that all these practices work better when there's a sense of embodiment. And we think of them as being sort of mental practices, but really, like in Buddhism, the Pali word that's used is chitta, and chitta sometimes gets translated as mind, but it's really like mind, heart, body. It's not like so. Recognition that these lines we draw between mind and heart and body are just arbitrary maps. There's no real border. Excellent.
In I think it was the first class we were talking about how we get pretty overwhelmed by all of the difficulties in the world and the suffering. And you were talking about how you could read about that and things and shift into compassion. I'm getting it mixed up between empathy and compassion, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you might be able to kind of say like how would an inner dialogue sound from that overwhelm to that more peaceful place of being with it without the overwhelm.
Yeah. This is a big topic, but the headline is that the natural tendency of the empathetic heart is to vibrate in attunement with suffering. So we see someone suffering or read about suffering, and then the heart moves as if we were in that situation. It's like a beautiful quality we have as humans, that we can relate to each other, we can tune to each other. In family systems and close personal relationships, it's essential. You have to be able to feel what the other person's feeling, to be able to get along. The movement of the mind to compassion is to first bring metta into the equation. So we see suffering, we see it clearly, we know that it's suffering, but we're bringing an attitude of kindness to it. Often when I see suffering, I read about the war in Ukraine, and then I'm angry at Putin because he started this war and people are dying, but it's bringing kindness to the situation. And then connecting not with the suffering as much as the genuine wish that the suffering be alleviated. It's in the vein of, may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be healthy. And so there's a phenomenon happening. It has suffering in it, but there's also love there. There's the thing that makes our heart quiver in attunement is that we care. So we're connecting more with the caring and less with the suffering itself. It's a very subtle, when I say that in words, but when you experience that in the mind, it feels profoundly different, because when you're in empathy, attunement, you're suffering and you feel the energy of that and all the emotional things that come with that, of being depressed and down and depleted. But when you're in the stance of compassion, you're connecting with this force of love, which is energizing, and actually the heart moves to what can I do to help also, like in a positive way. It's a huge topic, one of the most important topics I think of our time, because there is so much stress in the world, and also a little bit hard to talk about, and easier to like attune yourself to that experience. You can notice when you're more in the stance of compassion, and you're more in the stance of empathy, attunement.
I have a quick question,
Sure.
Meta. So you mentioned when we first started that to envision somebody, a loved one, and or a loved being, and what if, and then you had that person, that object, give it back. What if that, like, it's not reciprocated? Is there, are you?
Yeah, that was sort of, I mean, that's not really part of the instructions. I use that because sometimes it's easier when people have trouble befriending themselves. It's easier if there's like a bridge. So like in my example with the baby goats, they're very loving. I'm imagining the baby goats, like they nibble on your fingers and rub up against you with their tops of their heads. And,
Maybe taking it too literally.
what's that?
Was I taking it too literally?
No, I think the point you make is good in the conceptual realm. That, yeah, like maybe somebody's not reciprocating it, but this is more the realm of like, it's more evocative. It's more like pointing to something that moves in the heart in a different direction.
All right. Thank you.
So my time is up. I have to go do stuff, more of this actually. But I really enjoyed this time with you. It was wonderful. I'll probably do this again someday. I also have a lot of teachings happening. I do teach retreats, but there are times when I'll show up at different groups and it's like a one-off teaching at Spirit Rock, at Inside LA, at other places. And if you want to keep apprised of those, I think you all got signed up for my mailing list when you joined this class, unless you opted out. And they word the opt out in a very strange way, so almost no one opts out. But so you'll get an email from me. If you don't like to have a lot of emails, feel free to unsubscribe. I really won't take that personally. But I hope to see all of you again, and wishing you all the blessings of life, and yeah, be
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you, Guru.
Bye, everybody.
Best wishes.
Thank you for everything.
Well,
Bye.
thank you, Lulu.
And nice to meet everyone, by the way.
Yeah.
Well.
Yes.